Hi, my name is Maya and I'm a ninth grader in the IB program. Today I will be presenting my website on culture and books entitled A World of Books, yours to discover one page at a time. On my home page here I have included my main cultural statement and the title in bold. As my first text I have a persuasive text on how books relate to culture, because I wanted to persuade people on how books influence our culture. As a sidebar, I have included all my types of text, so the expository text on contrast and comparison on dystopian fictions. If you click here, you will be directed to that page. And here at the bottom, you can see my expository text on food binding in China, and by clicking here, you will be directed to that page. Also, I included a what I'm reading space, so by clicking here, you will be directed to the book I'm reading now. Moving on, world books. Here I have included a neutral background for the page. And by clicking on each of the tabs, you will be directed to a page that shows a genre, a book, or a different literary type that relates to the culture of the country. In the home page, I decided to put also a neutral background. So I'll start with United Kingdom. Here for my background, I chose a Ferris wheel because for me it represents the London Eye, which is one of the most cultural attractions of England. As my first book, I took Pride and Prejudice because in this story, Jane Austen, the author, demonstrates that marriage between different social classes is possible. For my second book, I chose The Iron Lady because this biography on Margaret Thatcher, the first female Prime Minister in the UK, and I thought this book best represented female equality, and this is an important value for me. Second country, France. For this background, I chose a simple bookshelf with neutral colors so that the images will stand out. I chose Chanel Sa Vie, a book that presents the woman Sa Vie as a book to present because the woman that this biography is about has such an impact on culture, it had to be in my website. I also chose Les Miserables as a second literary genre because it embodies the French political and judicial systems that were present during the French Revolution, and it really relates to France's culture and history. For South America. I chose an ostrich as my picture in my background because it's an African animal and it represents the country. As my book for this page, I chose to introduce the autobiography of Nelson Mandela, entitled A Long Walk to Freedom, because I think a lot of people know who this figure is, but not what he accomplished. For the United States. For the United States, I chose the ocean background to show that American culture represents a whole range of literary cultures since it was first colonized by the French and English who arrived by way of boat. I did an expository text on dystopian fiction because I wanted to offer a contrast between the two types of literature, dystopian and utopian, that teenagers relate to nowadays. Two examples of dystopian fictions are Divergent and Hunger Games. I also chose to include the book The Help because to me it is very important for people all around the world to know that racism is still part of people's lives so they can think about it and find ways to stop discrimination. Moving on to Cuba. The background represents Cuban music because of the instruments in the picture. So here you see a trumpet and a drum, which are pretty much the instruments that Cuban people use. So the book Havana Nights really explains the Cuban culture and how it's based on dance and music. And in this story, we get a mashup of American culture and Cuban culture through dance. So, next is Germany. So here as a background, I chose to put a tank which represents World War II. The book thief in this subject captures the lives of lower class people during World War II and offers a better understanding of what it was like for them. So I thought it really represented the German culture. The next country is Japan. The background represents, here that I chose, is ink, and it represents the makeup that geishas used and their use of the colors red and pink that they always use as lip color. So here is like the lip color that they used. It really relates to the Japanese culture and its influence on people in Japan. The image of a geisha here at the bottom is playing the most common Japanese instruments with which pretty much all the geishas knew how to play. I also included reviews at the bottom of the page, and I put the journal which the review is from in a different font. And last but not least is China. So I wanted to introduce, for my expository text, I wanted to introduce in China a phenomenon that really opened up my eyes to what women had to endure to conform to a certain beauty standard in the culture of their country. So here I talk about foot binding in China. So foot binding is pretty much women that had to bind their feet to have the tiniest feet possible so that they would be considered beautiful. So here is a shoe for bound feet that were about 3 inches long. So as a background for the Chinese page, I put a mountain with fog because it reminds me of Chinese geography. So here's the page on authors, and I chose Nicholas Spark. So here in the background, I put an old-fashioned typewriter to demonstrate that authors used to write their books and can still write them by hand. And here you have examples of Nicholas Sparks' books that are really popular. So last but not least, the font is the same throughout the website except for the book titles because I wanted them to stand out. So here, for example, United Kingdom, it's the same font throughout the website except for the title of the books. So all in all, my website relates to culture because books, culture is what inspires us to write books. So it relates to my key concept and to the subject that is culture, and so thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you will enjoy my website.